even with regard to tourism, it talks of some very appalling facts. Some point in the report, it says that out of the tourists who visit Sri Lanka, only 30% will be visiting the forest. This is a very low figure, and the reason for this is the forests are very badly managed. Actually, these kind of statements are very detrimental to the country, even to the image of the country. And we should ask from the World Bank, how on earth did you arrive at this kind of inferences? And here we very clearly see, for the need of promulgating their project, they come out with all sorts of things, all sorts of ideas, some of which could be very wrong. With regard to tourism, the World Bank says in this report that the tourism industry in Sri Lanka is a very closed one. This is bad, and therefore the benefits of tourism don't really trickle down to people on ground. We know this is a fact which is common not only to tourism but to many other things, to the service sector, the production sector, and also to the entire developmental paradigm in this country. And this is a bad situation which needs to be corrected. But anyhow, when you look at the World Bank report, you don't see any proposals which are there to correct this situation. Actually, the most of the proposals that we see in this report would be further worsening the situation. On nature-based tourism in protected areas, for which US $6 million had been allocated, the facilities that have been identified to be either constructed or renovated include visitor service infrastructure such as comfort facilities, park bungalows, campsites, construction of nature trails, wayside interpretation points, observation towers, wildlife hides, canopy walks. Actually, the question that we got to ask is, by developing these things, what would you expect? You have already said in your report, and it's a fact, that most of these sites at present face a problem due to over-visitation. And by developing this infrastructure, what do you expect? So we can safely assume that through this infrastructure development, there will be more visitors coming to these locations and thereby further burdening the situation. Although the World Bank says the project will be community centered and the people will be benefited through this project, but actually when you go through the report, you would not see anything to that effect. And we can very safely say that this is not at all a community centered or people centered project that they talk about. In this report, nowhere it is mentioned how many trackers or how many interpreters that they will be training, or how many community sales centered that would be put up, or even the word homestay comes just once in this report. So we don't see anything with regard to being community oriented in this project. But we can say just the opposite of that could happen through implementation of this project, as it had happened elsewhere in relation to Singharaja entry points, for example in Morningside and Pitadeniya, where ultimately what had happened was big tourism companies have gone there, and they are catering to very high-end tourists in those places. very expensive hotels have come up, and some of these are very adjacent to the boundaries of the nature reserve, and they are catering to very high-end tourists. These facilities being very expensive, and also contributing to environmental pollution in these areas. And other than that, we don't see benefits really trickling down to people, and we can very safely assume the same scenario will happen with regard to Kudava as well in future. Also, we can extend our argument that this particular project is not going to be community centered, or community is going to be really benefited through this project using their own facts and figures. The report says there would be a total of 15,000 beneficiaries of this project, of which 30% are women. Actually, if this project is really planted on ground, it has to benefit men and women in equal numbers, because community is comprised of men and women in equal numbers. So if this project is a real community based one, it should the beneficiaries should be equal proportions of men and women. So for the fact that this ultimately would have 30% of the beneficiaries will mean that good part of this project benefits would go somewhere else, and that would be reaped by the big companies who are in tourism industry.